Hey everyone, it's LS, and today we're going to be looking at the Tyler1 and Nightblue3 Baron call video. There's been some controversy around this, primarily because Tyler1 was adamant that Baron was the correct call, whereas Nightblue wanted to take the top tier 1 turret and push the waves. Tyler1 was saying that because Aatrox did not have teleport available to him, nor did he have his ultimate, he would not be able to get to Baron in time to aid his team, and they should have been able to either capture the Baron or eventually turn on the opponents. So we're going to look at a few timestamps, and then I'm going to talk about what I think is actually going on inside of this game, and then I'm going to give my input on what I believe to be the correct macro play, because I can't see another refinement. So right here is the still where Kindred is about to die to Tyler1 and Nightblue. So they end up getting the kill onto Kindred, and this is where Kindred goes down. So take note of where everyone currently is on the map, okay? So right here, you have Bard up in top lane, Kai'Sa in mid, and then you have Aatrox down here, you have Thresh right over here, and this is the freeze frame. Alright, so now we're going to go to another freeze frame, which is at 23:48, and we're going to take note of when Quinn arrives. Now, right now, the game timer is 20:48, and Quinn is going to be able to get to the Baron faster than Kha'Zix, just because of the movement speed. So you have to acknowledge that by the time Nightblue would be starting the Baron, it's not going to be the same exact time that Quinn would be starting it. It's also important to note that Nightblue does not actually have Smite. So we're looking at this right here, and you're looking at where Bard is. You see MF, you see Thresh, you see Malzahar, and Wukong is around here as well, and then Aatrox is still pushing the wave down in bottom, and the blue buff is up. So now we're going to go to the items really quickly. We're going to go to 31:48. I'm going to take a quick peek right here. Malzahar has 2.5 items. Malzahar has 33 pen. So what's going to be happening here is that a lot of these targets are going to be near true damage by Malzahar. He is massive. Not only does he have his Flash and his R still available to him, he also has Zanya's Hourglass. There is a Knight on Thresh. MF is likely going to have ultimate by the time this fight ends up ensuing. And the angle that this team is going to be able to have, because of the natural concave that the red team is forced to take while trying to consume the Baron, is going to make it too easy for Malzahar and Thresh and MF to defend against the Baron, because Malzahar's Q, his Voidlings and his Malefic Visions are just so scary in a spot like this, in addition to Thresh's Flay and the box. If the argument is then to suggest that Wukong go here or try to go invisible and then try to engage onto Malzahar, and you're insinuating that he must be able to do this before Malzahar should be able to react, that doesn't make any sense. Because what you're suggesting is that Wukong use one of his abilities, his E, his Flash, and his ult, but you're then proposing that Malzahar does not have the ability to react with a Flash of his own and an R of his own, or you're suggesting that Thresh must miss his Flay or not use his box in order for this to happen. Also, because of the speed at which Wukong is going to be able to gap close against the Malzahar team, his teammates are not going to be able to follow up as quickly. Some people might put forth the argument that, well, Bard could then ult. The problem is that Bard can't ult preemptively, so you're reliant now on Kai'Sa to hit the projectile to pop Malzahar's passive shield. The problem is that if you're saying all of this, you're also saying that they're not using their cooldowns in order to burst down the Baron if they're going to have the mindset to turn. So you can't have it both ways. Either you start the Baron and you keep doing it with the intention to turn, in which case you're keeping up some of the cooldowns because you expect to turn and you're going to have to use your Flash and you're going to have to use abilities, or you started the Baron and some of your abilities are going to be on cooldown, in which case Malzahar, Thresh, and MF are going to have an even higher edge because of, again, the concave. They'll be fighting from down here. Malzahar, it's going to be way too easy with his Q because of the long range. None of the players on Tyler1 or Nightblue's team is really able to respond to that range in this specific instance, especially because, for the most part, they're all summonerless with the exception of Nightblue and then Wukong. So what I think would end up happening here is that we're going to notice that the Baron goes a little bit low, Bard ends up trolling. And if Nightblue is here, please keep in mind that he does not have Smite. He is going to only add a limited amount of damage to the Baron. Do I think they can get it into the few low thousands? Absolutely. I do think that it would be then met with them likely getting aced and then probably losing the Baron. I don't think that they actually have the ability to turn unless you support the notion that, again, Malzahar, Thresh, and MF must make mistakes in order for a turn to actually be successful. Because Malzahar, Thresh, and MF don't actually need Aatrox, this actually enables Aatrox to get 2 waves in bottom, turret, and get the blue buff, and then have lane control over bottom lane, eventually go into a recall, and then the lane state for Tyler1 and Nightblue's team is going to be really bad. So I'm going to pull Rift Kit onto the screen right here, and what I suggest to be the correct rotation, if we go back to the timestamp on the kill, so I'm going to 21:11. So look at the state of the map. So I'm going to bring Rift Kit right onto the screen really quick. All right, and so this is how the map looks right now. All right, so the jungler is dead. You have Kai'Sa, you have Thresh. Thresh is actually right here. And then you have Bard coming down from right here, and you have Kha'Zix right here, and then you have Tyler1 right around here. Okay, there is a minion wave right here. There was a wave right here. You have a wave right here. Aatrox is actually up here, and then Malzahar is right here. In addition to this, you have a wave that is in mid lane, and then you have obviously some of the damage on the mid-tier 1 turret, and then you have the blue buff, which is obviously up over here. So the thing that I'm going to suggest is that Tyler1 actually instantly recalls, and he goes all the way to the fountain. He then ults down into bottom lane to catch the 2 waves, and then shove the next wave that'll come out of the Nexus. Doing this, he'll be able to defend the his own blue buff, and then be able to go pick it up. Nightblue can actually shove the current wave, the next wave, get the turret, and shove the next wave, and then recall. What this will end up doing is causing the top lane to bounce back eventually into Nightblue and Tyler1's team, which is going to be advantageous. The ADC and the support and Wukong can try to get some pressure onto the mid turret, but they're likely not going to be able to get it. So from this point, what will end up happening is Quinn can shove the wave back down into bottom. Eventually this will be likely picked up and matched by one of the carries on the blue team, and then it'll be shoved back in, but that's okay because there's no neutral objective that is realistically going to be available for either team to take. The top lane getting shoved back in is going to be really good for Kai'Sa, because then Kai'Sa can actually go from being in mid lane in about a minute and a half to bouncing up to the top lane to pick up the wave. Quinn will have the blue buff, and then Wukong will eventually go into the bottom lane, and he'll look to split push, because again, it's unrealistic to assume that there should be any way to capture any neutral objective. So this is the macro rotation that is, I think, should be put forth. I think that these are the plays that all of the champions should make inside of this game, because I think that it produces the safest play, and I think that it nets the highest gain without requiring either yourselves to outplay the opponents or the opponents to make crucial mistakes in order for you to be able to capitalize and punish on them. So I want to go to the Baron area, and you can see that Aatrox is even actually making a mistake. He's trying to come up, even though it's going to be unlikely that he can actually aid in anything. Now, again, if Bard is here, Bard's not going to be adding that much damage to the Baron. A lot of people are saying that this is actually a 3 versus 5, but it's not. Baron essentially has to count as a champion in this particular scenario. The other thing is that Malzahar is the primary carry that is crucial and entirely able to stop this situation by himself. Just so happens to be that he has all of the gold on his team. He has a ton of the kills. I think he's 8, 2, and 7. He has 2.5 core items, and he has tier 2 boots, and he's dealing essentially true damage to some of the members on Tyler1 and Nightblue's team. The thing is, with the Voidlings, the Box, and the Thresh Flay, it's all too easy, again, for them to stand down here, balance the range of the Qs, which is going to outrange all of the members on Tyler1 and Nightblue's team, and again, you're saying that they're bursting Baron, which then requires them to use cooldowns. So it's not as easy as just simply turning. If you do want to start the Baron and you have some people hold their cooldowns because you think that the opponents will panic and run into the Baron, and then you try to turn on them, even that, again, is still requiring them to make mistakes in order for, I think, it to be a good play. So in the end, I think that Nightblue's decision to stay top lane, push the wave that was right here, push the next wave, get the turret, and push the next wave before it would end up being picked up by likely Malzahar, as MF and Thresh are going to be in mid lane. I think that that's the best play. Tyler1 should have recalled, and he should have gone down into bottom lane. He should have picked up 2 waves, shoved the 3rd wave that would come out of the Nexus, and then path up to his blue and consume the blue. All the while, Kai'Sa stays in mid lane. Wukong eventually recalls, paths down into bottom. Tyler1 hands off mid lane, and Kai'Sa ends up going up top to pick up the wave that will inevitably be bounced back on the third wave in top lane. There is no way that a Baron should be a possible play if Malzahar, Thresh, and MF don't, go into a coma. Even, like I said, I concede the notion that you can get the Baron semi-low. The problem is that all of the members are going to be on cooldown, and Malzahar is the one champion that is best in this specific scenario, and he has all of the gold. It doesn't matter that Aatrox isn't there. What'll end up happening is a few scenarios. Either everyone dies at Baron, enemy team gets Baron, Aatrox gets bottom turret and 3 waves and then steals away the blue buff, and then bottom lane goes dark, and because it goes dark, the reinforcing minion waves are in close proximity to Tyler1 and Nightblue's team, which then means that the wave shoves back into the opponent, which is not something that they really can afford to have happen right now. Another thing is that Tyler1 and Nightblue's team is forced to disengage the Baron. If they're forced to eventually disengage the Baron, you ended up not getting any of the waves up in top lane. The wave is going to likely be pushing back into them eventually, and then they still have their tier 1 turret. They will have priority and vision control over mid lane, and then Aatrox will still get the 2 waves down in bottom, and there might end up being, blue might get contested. So I think that this is what ends up, well, I would bet money that this is what ends up happening. And so I think that's pretty much it. Everything is important to acknowledge. You can't just make it so that one team can do everything right and the enemy team can't do anything right. I think that it's disingenuous to say that it's very easy for Tyler1 and Nightblue's team to turn onto the Malzahar, Thresh, and MF. I think it's actually infinitely easier for the Malzahar, Thresh, and MF to stop the Baron than it is for Tyler1 and Nightblue's team to actually coordinate their cooldowns and the exact moment that all of them would have to turn in order to find some sort of success. Again, especially considering that they are summonerless for the most part, and they're going to be taking damage because Baron is essentially acting as a 4th player. And then because of the choke point and the angle and the way that Thresh's box is going to cover so much of the area from the choke point that Malzahar is likely to be kiting inside of, it makes it all too impossible, I think, to get onto him, and then MF is just going to light you up. I think in a very ugly scenario where both parties make some mistakes, you can maybe go 2 for 2, but I would probably suggest that that's going to be a very small % of the time. I think in most cases, Malzahar, Thresh, and MF clean up quite handily, and I think that the call itself is bad. Now, if there were a Mountain Drake, I think that there's actually an argument for trying to burst the Baron and then kiting into the pit, waiting for the cooldowns, and then trying to maybe go on it from that angle because Malzahar is going to be more wide in the open, and then you can actually approach him from multiple angles depending on how you want to use your flashes and your leaps and whatever else. And I think it makes it a lot more difficult, especially because the champions on Nightblue and Tyler's 1 team can actually be more spread inside of the pit or on the outskirts of the pit right here to make the queue a little bit more awkward. And then obviously the Malefic Vision bounce isn't going to be as powerful, but they can't just simply back up into the pit because Malzahar, Thresh, and MF will just chase them into it without the mountain. They don't have enough damage, and then that's pretty much it. So I hope that you guys enjoyed the video, and I hope that this was a clear enough explanation on what is going on, the champions, the minions, and how they're going to move, and what can end up happening if the play goes wrong, and what Aatrox can end up gaining. I'm sure, some people are going to flame me for saying Aatrox instead of Aatrox, so thank you very much, and that's it.